Back for day two of remote learning in global history. Now, yesterday you should have learned just the intro to the Chinese decolonial movement. You should have learned a bit about Mao and how he gained support for the Communist Party in China and had a nationalistic liberation movement. Now, today we are going to be getting into this objective about Mao's Great Leap Forward, but let's break down the objective. Students will be able to corroborate and compare primary sources from China's Great Leap Forward. Now, this word corroborate sounds a lot like cooperate. Imagine that documents or sources are cooperating with each other or having a conversation with each other. Documents could both be talking about decolonization and how they feel. If the documents were to be having a conversation, what would the point of view be? What would they say to each other? How do the documents interact with one another around the same idea? That's why this word corroborate is also next to compare, because in order to compare, you have to make two documents have a conversation with one another. Now, China's Great Leap Forward. In short, China's Great Leap Forward is a movement to push China into an industrialist economy. And this is all Mao's plan to do it in 4 years. And we're going to talk more about that as we get into the mini lesson. Let's break down the agenda. First, we're going to have a right now where we look at some words and imaging about Mao and his vision for China. Then we're going to get into a mini lesson about the Great Leap Forward and what the Great Leap Forward was. And then three, we're going to look at some propaganda posters and how Mao's Communist Party was able to get the support of the Chinese people to industrialize so quickly. Then we're going to do a Google Classroom question, which will be your assignment for the day and which will get you credit for global history. And we are going to have a closeout and reflection about what we learned in regards to the Great Leap Forward and where we're moving forward to next. So let's keep going. So again, you should be in your notes on the slides. You should be around let me check, slide 18, 17. So if you're following along on your own slides, you should be on slide 17. So what is Mao's vision for industrializing China? Why would Mao want to industrialize China? Let's look at this quote. China has two advantages. One is emptiness, the other is blankness. With no encumbrance of any kind, the United States in George Washington's era was blank, so it could develop very rapidly. The Soviet Union was also blank. China's industrial development can proceed more swiftly than the Soviet Union's. Mao Zedong, 1956. So when you're thinking about your response to this right now, I want you to ask yourself, why would a brand new, a newly liberated nation want to industrialize? Why couldn't China have just gone on as being like a mainly agricultural nation that it's been in the past? What is the value of industrializing for a country like China, especially in a year like 1956? What's going on in the world? Why might industrialization be a helpful thing for China? Pause the video and answer this question in your notes. All right, let's keep going. So, today's question: were Mao Zedong's actions during the Great Leap Forward more liberating or more destructive for China? Now, one thing we're going to learn, especially I think a trend that we can look at throughout history, is whenever a nation industrializes, there's very often some like really negative downfalls to it. We looked at industrialization in Great Britain and how many people it hurt, the children who were working in factories, the horrible work conditions. We looked at industrialization with Stalin's 5-year plan. And we noticed how millions of people died. More people died in Stalin's 5-year plan than in the Holocaust. What is it about industrialization that could be destructive? And what is it about industrialization that can be liberating? This is just a way to think about this question as we go through the lesson. Now, the Great Leap Forward, 1958 to 1962. China is going to industrialize in 4 years. And this is pretty astonishing, especially if we think forward to the place that China is at today. Now, Mao's plan to rapidly industrialize China was definitely a do over or definitely inspired by Stalin's 5 year plans. I wonder, and for if you could think, would the sacrifices, and I mean the sacrifices of like lives, would those sacrifices miss Mao? Or would Mao also think to himself, some people might have to die for us to industrialize? Is that something that is acceptable? Is that a human rights violation? How should a leader handle this type of question? Now, China industrializes in 4 years, and how do they gain this project? One, they nationalize all private property. That means that the government takes over private property. Remember, you have to collectivize the land, taking over the land, having farmers be willing to give up their grain instead of sell their grain on a private market. What does that mean for people who traditionally do the work in a society? That means that they're going to have to make a lot of sacrifices. How do you get people behind this? You do a campaign. And here are the types of imaging you see in propaganda for the Great Leap Forward. Here, you can see like some traditional Chinese art. Wait. Here you can see some traditional Chinese art. There are people carrying a basket full of food, um, fruits, vegetables. I believe I see meat in there, and they're carrying it in the clouds onto the land for the people. Again, this imaging is meant to send a message about what the Great Leap Forward will do for Chinese people. Here you can see military men, Navy men, and just an average citizen praising Chairman Mao. Um, the image of Mao is very important to recognize. All right, let's zoom back out. So let's get into the task for today. So we are going to be corroborating two sources about this great leap forward. If you go into your source pack on page 9, you will find these two sources. We want you to read the sources, go ahead and finish each paragraph by filling out the graphic organizer that is in your 606 notes. Then you will answer a Google question, the same question of the day. Was Mao Zedong's actions during the Great Leap Forward more liberating or more destructive for China? This is a question that is up to you. It is opinion based, but we are grading you based on your evidence. Is your evidence richly supporting the task? Is it incorporating substantial strategic relevant evidence that includes facts, examples, and details? Remember, richly. And is it relevant? You cannot just pull something from the text and say, hey, I checked off this box, I have evidence. Does the evidence match the argument of your answer? Now, when you are done with that Google question, that is your responsibility for Global Today. Make sure that you write 5 to 8 complete sentences. Make sure that you put quotations around your response so that you are properly citing your evidence. Put what source it came from. Talk about the point of view of the source. Talk about how they compare to each other. If you have any questions, please tune in to me or Mr. Beaton's office hours and feel free to contact me. Here is a quick, as Mr. Francis would call it, Easter egg. If you can tell me what was Mao Zedong's profession before he was a revolutionary, I will give you 5 House Cup points. And have a nice day, y'all.